All right, everybody. So I'm here with Pam Marvin, the Creighton model specialist for NFP. She's someone that Amber and I have known for years. And oddly enough, we're one of her only patients, one of the few that's used it for not to get pregnant, right? A lot of people use it specifically to get pregnant, start tracking their cycles, see if there's anything wrong, because the female body tells you so much. And if you follow my channel for a while, and all of you have, I deal with a lot of women, a lot of female issues. And this is something that you can do on your own, learn on your own. That way you can, see, it tells you a lot about your health. So without further ado, Pam, why don't you give us an introduction?
Okay. Again, I'm Pam Marvin. I am a fertility care practitioner certified in the Bryan College Station area, and I do remote learning as well, if that's a need be. I've been doing this for 5 years, and as Chris was telling you, I would say about a third of the people I see is straight up natural family planning, usually to avoid this. Third of the people I see are young women who are like, something is wrong with my cycle and I really want to figure out how to be more regular. Usually it has to do with polycystic ovaries. We're slight, and we can get it more into that here in a little bit. And then the third reason are people or couples that are experiencing some subfertility. And the two main causes of that subfertility is polycystic ovaries and endometriosis. And when you when you chart with Creighton model, it gives me an idea, because I've seen a lot of charts at this point. I can have a hunch to say, okay, this is looking like PCOS, maybe it's an endo, maybe it's a little bit of both. And Chris, another interesting one I'm starting to see a little bit now is thyroid issues. And you just can't believe that in the charting, Creighton model charting, I can see that and start to suspect it. So many of the women are really blown away to see that.
So let's start there, because everyone says they have a thyroid issue. So this is interesting news to me. I've never even realized it. But how can you see thyroid issues from track? Well, okay, let's start off with, what is Creighton model first? So okay. It's Creighton model different from other NFPs, like, the temperature model, or just, the app that everyone thinks that they can just use and go from there? What makes Creighton model superior or different?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to just give you the really 101 on NFP models, which now we're calling them fertility awareness-based methods, FABMs, okay? And there are hundreds out there on the market today. Usually you can tell a higher quality one, because they're not all created equal. A higher quality one usually does have an instructor, because it is a very fine-tuned science. Yeah. So the leaders right now in NFP that I am seeing in my clients and in the community are definitely Creighton, Symptothermal, and now Marquette is kind of getting a head up or a leg up, or a foothold, I guess is the best way to say it. Now, Creighton, and the reason why I teach Creighton is it has 50 plus years of science research that's gone into it so far and continuing. There's a whole institute in I'm blanking on it. So in Omaha, Nebraska, and there's a whole institute. They developed NAPRO technology, Christopher, and that stands for natural procreative technology. It's a restorative medicine. We love that word, restorative, because it works with people like you who are just helping them with diet, supplements, exercise, things like that, which is the first line of defense that I always use, even in my practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so Creighton is a restorative, and it is the only NFP program that actually has women's health issues as a preliminary diagnostic tool. The others are going to tell you times of fertility and infertility, yes, and some people really enjoy them and they're very successful with them. But the reason I teach Creighton is I do work in a doctor's office, and we take it a little bit further to work with cycle issues and subfertility. So it's just a whole nother layer of information in there. And we kind of do it a little bit of old-fashioned way. I can kind of flash a little bit of a chart up here that shows you.
We have the
charts. Yeah. And here's someone, this is actually was a friend of mine who became pregnant, and I wanted to chart it to try and do date of conception, which was kind of fun. So we can always kind of figure out the date of due date from time of conception rather than for lost menstrual periods. So that's
What's
kind
even
of
more
fun too.
fun is putting that eye on the chart too.
Yeah, yeah. That's the guy's favorite parts, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, so let's start with thyroid. How can you tell thyroid issues?
Okay, well, let me just back up. That's a more
Sure.
complicated one. So let's talk with some of the simple ones that are very easy for women to identify. So one of the main things I see, 90% of every woman I see is experiencing some form of low progesterone.
Yep.
Now, how do you see that in a chart? How do you see that, ladies? It is with tail end brown bleeding of your period or premenstrual brown bleeding. That's the easiest one to identify as low progesterone. Now, if your mucus cycle is more than 8 days, you have a lot of mucus, you're probably estrogen dominant and low progesterone as well.
Yeah.
So here's that's another one. Now, the thyroid issues, what I've seen with them is kind of it's very similar to the way that PCOS acts, with kind of an off and on mucus symptom. Like you'll have a couple of days of mucus and then dry, and a couple of days and dry, which is also kind of symptomatic of PCOS. So the thyroid one takes a little longer for me to kind of see that, based on how she's been working on her diet, exercise, and so forth. And I'm not seeing the results like I would normally see, then I'd start to suspect some thyroid issues.
So talk to me about what are dry days and the mucus and stuff like that, so people can.
Right. Oh,
okay.
great question.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that the reason I have a job is to teach the window of fertility for men and women. Okay. This, I always tell this is because it's kind of funny. I teach marriage prep here in the community, and years apart, I've had couples come up to me who were animal science majors here at A&M, and they said, Miss Marvin, we learned this information about the mucus in the cattle, but we've never learned it about humans.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? So basically, as the estrogen starts to rise in a woman's body, she starts to secrete a mucus, and it starts out small, and then it increases to a very stringy, clear mucus, and then it shuts off when the progesterone cuts in, starts to kick in. So
Right.
there's usually a window. Healthy is 4 to 8 days. Outside of 8 days, usually I suspect some kind of estrogen dominance going on there. But yeah, 4 to 8 days.
And that's
of a
what
mucus,
ovulation
and that's
estrogen.
right.
Right.
The ovulation usually happens the day before peak day, and peak day is the last day that you have any mucus that stretches over an inch, very clear, very lubricative. And it usually happens right before that, because you get that shift in the estrogen to progesterone.
Yeah. And it's something that I kind of when the song WAP came out, right? That's kind of what it is, right? You have all that mucus, and it allows the sperm to, basically it's like a free slip and slide to allow the sperm to get where it needs to go.
Exactly.
Mucus you have when you have ovulation, then that's what makes the women more horny. You know, they're
Sometimes, they say clinically that's not actually been proven, but I can tell you in this little in my office, that's definitely a thing. They're like, that's just such a cool joke, because that's what we want to the most.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. But it's God's plan.
Yeah, exactly. Anecdotally, I've found, even with Amber too, that that's when the face clears up a little bit, the breasts get perkier. And one thing that I also read as well is that's when women are most likely to go out to the club and unknowingly, subconsciously look for a mate, right? Because that's their time when their body wants to be fertile. So
that's right.
It's kind of cool that everything that Amber and I learned years ago and everything I'm learning now, integrating it together, and it's just like, whoa, like that was ahead of
it all works together.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're one of those, Chris, but there's so many husbands that like, oh, you were totally ovulating, I can tell.
Yes
because of her appearance. I even had one or two, I've had 2 clients, the men say, yeah, she just smells differently.
Yeah.
She smells, and I'm like, okay.
Differently, and I've noticed with myself, because when Amber and I have been together so long and tracking this, I'll wake up in the mood, and that's when I know, like, hey, you're ovulating, aren't you? And she's like, how do you know? And other than the charting, my body can tell, because I want to engage more,
Well, yeah, procreate. That's what we're made for,
Yeah, yeah,
We
it's
are.
essentially that's what it comes down to, procreate, send your genes on, and
That's right.
right. So, a few questions that I got before we go further. One of them is this something I can teach my girls? And I'll start with that because I will say yes and no because I'm not the expert. I would send them to, Pam or your daughter, who specializes in this, but it's definitely something that, you know, we will educate our girls on. And it's something that's not normal, talking about the vagina, with your kids. It's
Sure.
taboo,
Hmm.
like that's your private parts, you don't talk about it. But like you said, there's so many health aspects in it. Why would you just skip over that? So of course, we'll start to, explain things as they're older. And Mia's 8.5, 9. So that'll be something we talk about in the next 4 to 5 years. But yeah, basically, is this something I can teach my girls? I'll let you give your aspect on it.
Yeah. Okay. Such a good question. So, I mean, during my journey, I've had teenage girls from the beginning, so I can have real world experience of what it's like. So, the first step with a young lady is like those early teens, because usually, most young ladies start around 11 or 12. But just explaining to them that they have a mucus cycle within their cycle, which is their window of fertility. Because as women, we were never taught. We're like, what, ooh, what is this kind of thing? And when you learn that it has purpose and meaning in your biology, that's pretty cool. The second step that I started getting as my girls started getting a little older, because Christopher, we see young women starting to become irregular and have symptoms of PCOS at 16 and in high school. Usually they're put on the pill for the irregularity to become more regular. But again, it just kind of covers up the problem. So we want to work with fixing the behind the scenes. So my second step is that's the only time I really do recommend some of the apps for the teenagers, because I want them to keep track of how regular their cycles are. Because when they're in high school, you want to make sure they're having, their periods every 27, 30 days. That's the most important thing about their health, to make sure they're regular. If that starts to fall off, I would definitely say the first line of defense for me would be see someone like you. Okay, they're getting kind of irregular. Do I need to put her on some type of fitness workout and diet? Absolutely. That's the best first defense. Like I have a few college students who know what I do, and I know them from the community, and they'll come and ask, can I come see you? I really want to talk because I'm really concerned about being so irregular.
Yeah.
And I say, just like we've been saying, and they get on a good track of eating right and exercising, and their periods, come back regularly. And so they don't see me. And then a couple months later, oh, I haven't been doing so good. I need to come back and see you because I'm getting irregular again. So yes, it is a battle. It's a long-term thing that you really have to. And, another good thing to understand is you can control PCOS through these measures we've talked about. But it is something that will probably be with you all your life. I'm sorry to say that, but that's very true. It's a lifelong battle, and really trying to keep it intact or under control while you're younger is so very important.
Yeah, and getting it controlled while you're younger is gonna be the best, because the longer you go with it, the longer it's gonna sustain with you. And the worst,
Right.
I myself, like you said, talking about PCOS and things. A lot of times PCOS, or even just the estrogen dominance, like we talked about. I may have them, eat a whole food diet, supplement, especially if they're on birth control. It's going to deplete some vitamins and minerals, depending on type of birth control. But the thing is, yeah, it's hormonal based, but it's not really bio. What's what I'm looking for? Where it's pretty much the same type of hormone that we produce, right? The one that's very synthetic that they get.
Bioidentical, yeah.
Identical, yes. So the synthetic ones they can cause a lot of issues in the long run. That's something that's huge in the fitness industry right now that I see a lot. I have someone that had PCOS or estrogen dominant. A lot of the times, again, you got to support those detox pathways. If they're low in progesterone and they've noticed that they have a lot of bad PMS symptoms, being on a whole food diet, proper supplementation, I may give them some chaseberry that will start to it will start the communication again with the pituitary, hypothalamus, and adrenals, HPA
Right.
axis.
Now, isn't that also under the name Vitex, the
Yes,
chasteberry?
yes, there's vitamin.
Yes, exactly.
Those work
Mhm.
really well. So if someone says, hey, I have PMS, I'm gonna go get birth control. Well, hold on. You shouldn't have PMS in the first place. It should be it shouldn't be that bad when you have migraines and have to stay home all day. So if you take care of the original issue instead of get on birth control and adding another issue down the road, then
So true.
but it's something that isn't talked about as much anymore. Another one says NFP sounds scary. What's the percentage rate for it versus birth control for preventative measures?
It's about the same.
Yeah.
If done well. So what I usually like to do, this is, I'm so glad you asked. I love this question because in my intro session, it says that with perfect use, it's 99% effective. Nobody's perfect, so I kind of throw that one out, but 96% effective with normal human being use, 96% effective. So what I like to tell them is depends on how well you chart and how well you follow the instructions for intercourse. And those two things are in your control. The better you do, the higher that 99 goes, right? The sloppier you get, the lower that number goes. So it's really all under your control. It has to do with self-control, which we need more of in these day and times, which is another reason I think NFP's time is here,
Yeah, and
for sure.
Amber and I used it for about 4.5 years, and we successfully, didn't, have a pregnancy. And people kind of laughed like, "Oh, NFP doesn't work. You have 5 kids," but ours were planned. So especially we used it. We were preventative for 4.5 years, and we used no birth control at all, no condoms. Everything was just as natural as it can be. And
I got to add to this. This way.
People were surprised when I told them like there's certain times of the month where the women's vagina will kill the sperm and doesn't allow conception. Obviously, there's no ovulation at that time as well. Yeah. And like, I didn't know that. It's not really taught in schools either.
Right. It's not. And another one that's really a sensitive, very personal topic, but I think it's really important because I even have clients that have come home pregnant after using withdrawal method. Mm-hmm. Why is that? A lot of people like to, that's just their mode of their birth control being more natural, whatever. But I'm here to tell you that the pre-ejaculative is highly concentrated in sperm. I've got no less than 2 clients that have gotten pregnant that way using fertile days. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it just, we all know someone that, that's how I did it, or they just say, I pulled out, but it's not the same. Again, the semen there that doesn't eventually come out, right? The pre-semen is very concentrated, like you said, especially if you do it on a highly high day where you can get pregnant, right?
Yep. Sure. I mean, there's what's called a contact pregnancy. Yeah. The good mucus is outside the woman's body, and those fluids just touch. You can have what's called a contact pregnancy. But Chris, I want to go back to you having several children and people going, yeah, but maybe the NFP doesn't work as well. I've heard this a lot, and there's a reason for it. When you use natural family planning, it helps you to really deeply develop a love of and appreciation for new life.
Yep.
You really do. You see the beauty in God's creation about it. So anybody that's in tune with their bodies usually has a more natural tendency toward appreciating new life. And people like you and me, I mean, I have 5 kids. You're up to 5 now. Is that right? Yep. Yeah. So it is definitely an appreciation for the new life and for your own body. I mean, I would say that it's a lot of respect for your own body, not to put the harmful chemicals or devices in your body as a woman. And a lot of women, they're ready for it. They're just ready for something more natural.
Yeah, definitely. Next question was, has it strengthened your marriage or added trials? And I'll start with that one, saying it both. Because realistically, as beautiful as it sounds, it has its trials. And Amber is a part of a Creighton model group where, some women have, had their husbands be promiscuous because they couldn't, right? And it is something that needs to be said, and it's an honesty. And at the end of the day, men and women, you have to be the masters of your own body. You have to control your hormones.
So true.
It has strengthened our marriage because it gave me and Amber a new appreciation for sex. Then, you just do it whenever, right? And you're boom, gone. But now you yearn for each other in a way that you did when you were pre-dating because you couldn't wait for the first time, right? Especially as a male, from my perspective. And, there may be a week or two where you can't. And it's going to be really rough, and pun intended, it's going to be hard because those are her fertile days and you don't want to have a child right now. So you have to refrain from intercourse. So it has strengthened our marriage because it strengthened our bond. And it's something that we learned about her body together. So it gave me a whole new respect for her body because, again, she didn't want to be pregnant then. I didn't want to conceive right now. So we abstained and did it as natural as we could. But again, there are trials. It is rough sometimes. But that's just something that you deal with as a couple. And, from my perspective, as a man, you should be the master of your body, and your hormones can't just control everything. So, if you have troubles in that department, then maybe it may not be for you at the moment.
Right, right. I like to tell a lot of the single ladies, I say, listen, if you're with a guy and he totally respects your decision to do NFP and supports you, it's a good guy. The guys that are like, oh no, I want it when I want it kind of thing. It's like you can say bye-bye, but
Yeah.
it's a really good, it's a weed out tool, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's that first month where you can't have any intercourse because you are learning your body. First month or two where you're learning your cycle. So there might be a month or two where you can't go. Amber and I, we've gone maybe 3 months sometimes because she's been very irregular with her cycle. She spoke to you about it, and we just had to do what we had to do. At the end of the day, she is my wife, and we are one flesh. So everything that affects her affects me, and that's just that respect that I have to have for her as well. So
the one other thing I'll add that I see in you guys so much, Chris, I'm going to compliment you and Amber here just a second, is when you have two people that are really pointed to a growth in virtue, to really try to be more virtuous, good people, good parents, the whole package, NFP is going to work really well because we do need that self-control. And when you have that self-mastery, it actually makes for a better relationship too. So I see that in y'all, and you're just like the poster child for it. I love to tell people your story.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Another one, just gave birth. This is the last question I got. Just gave birth and want to try NFP. How do I start? So that's going to be your department there.
Well, for me, I can only really speak to the Creighton during, you come in and you start charting. Usually as soon as the, what they call the lochia, it's the bleeding after birth. As soon as that stops, then you actually start charting and can watch a return to your fertility. So you can monitor that return. But yeah, it's not the most ideal time to begin charting, but it's definitely doable. I've done that with a couple of people very successfully.
Yeah, and most of them they're not supposed to have intercourse for 6 weeks anyway, so might as well get started.
That's right.
Yeah, it may not be the best time for some people because breastfeeding will affect it. It has affected Amber's cycle as well with the breastfeeding. So it's going to be very person dependent, but I highly recommend anybody and everybody do it. Especially at least learn about your body naturally.
Right. I always say a lot of these young single women or the women that are like, I have a couple of clients right now, 2 young women who came in fairly young. They're thinking about getting married. They're like maybe just engaged, and all of their roommates are on the pill, and they're looking at her like she's crazy. But she's like, something just inherently seems not right about putting synthetic hormones in my body. I want to do it a different way. So I'm always like, I like these smart women who come and do this. I think they're more intuitive and just really want to appreciate the function of their body. And it's a self-dignity thing in a way, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, that's huge in the fitness industry right now that I've seen is, the birth control issue. That it causes PCOS, causes estrogen dominance, and it causes so many other problems, gut issues, and that's where I come in, and someone's like, oh, I just got off birth control. What do I do? Or I'm about to get off birth control. What do I do? And, that's where I come in and kind of put my expertise on and work from there. But, those who come off of it, I always recommend them like, hey, check out the Creighton model, check out some form of NFP, because, if you truly want to get off birth control, then I doubt they ever want to get back on. So
Yeah.
we go about so the condoms isn't for everybody, So, how do they maneuver their life from there? Because some of them have been on birth control since they were 16, here they are at 35, and they have no idea, what to do. So, some sort of NFP is always going to be best. And again, that's what I do for a living. I help people with their health, especially those coming off or wanting to learn more about themselves.
That sounds great. There's one other thing I think we need to talk about is on the same topic that I didn't even know that much when you guys were seeing me on a regular basis. And that is our environmental toxins. I'm sure you probably talk about it on your channel, but I want to talk about the ones that are really, really hurting fertility.
Yeah.
The biggest was that
xenoestrogens.
Yeah. The phyto, right. Okay. So where are those found? Mostly in plastics.
Yeah.
Right. So I encourage all my couples only using glass storage, because it's so easy to use the plastic storage for your food. Use glass. Try not to use regular plastic water bottles. I know sometimes when you travel that's hard, but get yourself. Yep. I've got my Yeti over there. So metal and glass are better for food storage. That's probably one of the higher phytoestrogens is that. But another hormone disruptor is really big that I'm seeing a lot is the artificial fragrances in laundry detergent and fabric softener. So you think of it this way, your bodies are sensitive and they're going to absorb all that even through your clothes. And Christopher, the plastic too is the phthalates, which you've probably heard about at this point, but phthalates are affecting sperm count in men and changing genetically the young men, the babies, so to speak. So you really want to be aware of that, because for the women, we store it in our body, but if dad has some in his body at the time of conception, he's passing that on to the infant as well. Yep. And these are all things that are just really sabotaging.
Interesting and sad at the same time, because a lot of it, without getting political, our government allows that other parts of the world
that's so true
have taken completely out.
Right.
I think in the past 80 years, the male testosterone is about 50% less.
I believe it.
So, and now we're learning about all that. All the types of xenoestrogens, whether it be fragrance or plastics, with the fragrances and all that. I mean, people think, oh, yeah, that's a bunch of bull, but we have testosterone creams and estrogen creams that we put on our skin and absorb, right? So why wouldn't we do the same thing with anything else? And that's something that we've done in our household about 2 years ago. We switched to all stainless steel, all plastic.
Good.
As natural as we can. The laundry detergents, the soaps, the toothpaste, like anything and everything you can think of.
So true.
We've made the switch. But it's something that someone's gonna have to take that next step to do if they want to do that. And it's something I highly recommend too, because everything that we talked about with the fragrances and the plastics, they're considered estrogens, and the body absorbs them and recognizes them as estrogen, which will raise the estrogen in males too. So that's where a lot of men who are overweight, they might have a lot of fat storages in the butt area, that very pear shape, right, that women are supposed to have. And that's one reason why too, is a lot of them have a lot more estrogen than they should, because males need estrogen. We need it for heart health and actual muscle building, but we only need a little bit, kind of like women with testosterone. You don't need that much. So yeah, it's definitely very eye-opening. And there's a book that I have. It's called I have it right here, and you might have seen it. It's called Estro Generation by Anthony J. And it was very eye-opening. And he gives some examples of ways to start cutting out some of the xenoestrogens from our everyday life. And it talks about,
I'd love to talk more about that sometime too, Chris.
I have to run the book by your office one day so you can just read it. It's
great.
how things are in our waters and
Oh, for sure.
it can be overwhelming for someone with anxiety. So if they have, a lot of anxiety, then I recommend that they seek a professional to work with and look at, and don't just read this book, because it can be a little bit.
Sure. The other thing that just sticking out that I want to make sure that we tell your friends here is the 3 most inflammatory foods.
Mhm.
So if you, and there's a lot of science now starting to really support that PCOS is an inflammatory type disease.
Mhm.
And the 3 most inflammatory, I guess you know them too, sugar, wheat, and dairy. So that gluten and dairy are just so inflammatory. So, but then you can make cleaner choices too. Like my daughter Mary, who's I guess she's a little bit younger than you are. She actually only uses einkorn. It starts with an Einkorn, einkorn, which is an ancient grain that doesn't have that other stuff in it.
Yeah. Especially the processed sugar. If you're going to use sugar, we use organic cane sugar, which is, we only use it rarely, or just get the natural sugars from the fruit. If you have lactose intolerant and have celiac disease and you're still going in on that, like, you're probably having a terrible time. And one way you would know is, a friend of mine, before I started learning about all this, he told me he had celiac disease. I'm like, well, how'd you know? He's like, well, every time I would drink beer, my face would just get flushed red. And I started looking more into that, and I'm like, oh, okay. So that's where a lot of it started making sense. And inflammation is huge. And inflammation is, especially a lot of inflammation over time, is where diseases come from, body diseases and things like that. So just making small switches like that,
right.
can
I
in the family.
Yeah, I took one of my daughters to get a food sensitivity test the other day, and I learned something from the chiropractor. I think this is so fascinating. She was telling me that an allergy, with a food allergy, you get an instant reaction, such as your friend that, got red, or, people. But if you had a food sensitivity, it usually takes a couple of days. And the way it manifests usually is joint pain.
Yep. Yeah, like arthritis, because that's what arthritis is, right? If you break it down, arthur is joint, and itis means inflammation, so joint inflammation. And that's one clear way to know is if you go on a low FODMAP diet, cut some of those things out, and you notice you feel better, your joints feel better, you're sleeping better. Well,
so true.
Look at whatever food you cut out, start adding things in slowly. If you notice a difference and you feel terrible again, remove that food and start adding other things back in. So it's always a plug and play, and there's so much to learn about everything like that.
So true. Yeah. During Lent, my husband and I went on a pretty strict low carb to 20 or less.
Yeah.
And it was amazing results. I mean, he lost 25 pounds, and I didn't really have a lot of weight to lose, but I probably lost 5 pounds in inflammation alone for just doing, we were doing 20 carbs or less.
Yeah.
Feels so much better. It's just amazing the difference that just the sugar, the wheat can really do.
I have a lot of clients who they make the switch over from just counting calories and macros to me putting them on a meal plan temporarily, and they lose like 5 pounds like crazy. And it's the same calories, but low inflammation. And a lot of them had food sensitivities that they didn't know about until and then that's when we start having that conversation. So I definitely understand that.
For sure. Awesome.
But that's all I got. I really appreciate you jumping on here and recording it for me.
Oh gosh.
You and that way.
Anytime, you might have a whole other converation.
Oh yeah.
Some other time. Have me on, because this is one of my favorite topics ever.
Yeah, we could go way off tangent and talk. But where can people find you? Do you have Instagram? Do you have a Facebook? Where are you out of?
I do actually. I'm Pam Galbraith Marvin on Facebook. I do work here in the Bryan College Station area, and you can DM me on either Facebook or Instagram if you want to hook up and just come see me. My first consultation, an introduction to natural family planning, is absolutely free. It's just our way of educating the public about the science. And I have a new intro, Chris, that you guys would like that. Instead of having like the drawings of the uterus and the cervical cribs, I now have actual photos, like surgically done photos of the anatomy. That's really very fascinating. So yeah, that's how you can reach me.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you hopping on with me, Pam, and I'm talking to you very soon.
All right. Give Amber my love.
I will. Bye.
All right. Bye.